Yeshivat Medrash Bet Zilka in today's special edition over here. One of the great yeshivot, especially in Iraq over the last few hundred years. Something we've related over many great biographies of great rabbis in this series, and many of them would actually spend time learning in this prestigious yeshiva. It was, let's say, in the center part of Baghdad, probably the most famous one, especially during the 19th and the 20th century. Many of the great rabbis would learn there. Let's learn some facts with regards to the yeshiva, respectively. Now, it was an important Beit Midrash in Baghdad, which was renowned among Eastern Jewry, especially mid-19th century to mid-20th century. Many of the great Iraqi rabbis of modern times arose, let's say, from this Beit Midrash and became prominent rabbis all over the world, even in Israel. Now, before the establishment of Medrash Bet Zilka, the famous Rabbi Hacham Abdallah Somech would teach Talmidim free of charge. Remember, we've spoken about Rabbi Abdallah Somech on various occasions before. He was a great Chacham, Rosh Yeshiva, and a posek, rendering various different Jewish laws. This was noted with warm approval by the Baghdadi Kranzi Ezekiel Reuben, who had a history of making generous contributions to charitable enterprises in Iraq and in Ottoman Palestine, including the establishment of the Beit Yaakov synagogue, also popularly known as the Hurva synagogue, I believe that's in the Jewish quarter in Israel, for, let's just say, the Perushim, the community disciples of the Vilna Gaon, Rabbi Eliyahu ben Solomon Zalman, who left Lithuania, let's say, at the beginning of the 19th century to settle in the land of Israel. Obviously, then it was part of Ottoman Syria. So he would actually donate this, and in 1840, Reuben brought a suitable courtyard and built a rabbinical school devoted to Chacham Abdallah Somech's Talmidim, students. It was first entitled Midrash Abu Menashi, after the Arabic nickname bestowed upon Reuben. And when he had his son Menashi, pronounced with an ultimate I, according to the Iraqi dialect of Judeo-Arabic. So there was an era of Chacham Abdallah Somech. So Abu Menashi contributed huge sums of money to cover, let's say, monthly living stipends for the student faculty and the body itself. In those days, there was also a large, let's say, room called Midrash Talmud Torah, which catered also to orphans and to children of the poor. And Chacham Abdallah Somech brought the top students to his Midrash to teach him Talmud and, let's say, the poskim, respectively, the various different laws. Now, Abu Menashi's support of the expanded student body, let's say, remained strong, sometimes extended to matchmaking and maintenance of their families, respectively, which is absolutely phenomenal. Now, with over the course of time, Chacham Abdallah Somech's efforts began to bear fruit. As the school would go on to expand, let's say, its students earned an increasing reputation for the great chachama, the wisdom and brilliance with regards to it. Graduates assumed various different positions as various different key roles in institutions. They would have the title Chacham as they started to teach in various other small yeshivot among small students, let's say smaller students. Now, the chronicles of a traveler of the name Benjamin II over here. Israel Joseph Benjamin, who was a Romanian Jewish historian and a traveler. He would travel Baghdad in 1848, and he would actually visit, let's say, the Medrash Bet Zilka. He will say, the curriculum for our Jewish brethren in this city in matters of religion and faith is excellent. This Beit Midrash is under the direction of Chacham Abdallah ben Abraham Somech. May God protect and keep him, who has assumed the burdens of his work without remuneration. He is independently wealthy, and indeed he was one of the most respected merchants in town when I visited. Yet all his affairs have been left in the charge of his assistant, while he devotes himself full-time to, let's say, this venerable enterprise. Now, it's interesting. Ezekiel Reuben passed away on the 14th of Tammuz in 1851. Maybe we'll speak about him in a separate video. He left behind two similarly generous sons. Their names Menashe, as mentioned before, and Sassoon. Notably, not only did they retain their father's stipends, but they also created new ones for students who had not been funded in his lifetime, and added to the base budget of the Midrash so that the students could learn with their full hearts. So the philanthropy and the brilliance of this family was absolutely phenomenal. Now, in 1854, Menashe would close the original building that his father had constructed for the Medrash. He bought 3 adjacent houses, the Bet Zilka house and the homes of Ezra Zilka and Chacham Abdallah Chedir. On the combined lots, he built a synagogue that he named Midrash Abu Menashe, and the larger seminary building that he named Medrash Bet Zilka. He also, purchased a number of Sifrei Torah for the use of both institutions, which is absolutely phenomenal over there. Now, the seminary, this Torah study hall in stature increased with time. It became a household name for great Mizrahi Jews, with significant number of European Jews were also aware of it. So it became world renowned. Students from across Iraq came for the chance to be steeped, in the Torah under the auspices of Rav Abdallah Samech. Now, the Torah Center ordained some of the great rabbis of the generation who would go on to serve in communities in Iraq, in Persia at that point in time, India, and the Levant. Once again, there was another traveler who chronicled in 1860, shortly afterwards, I believe in Sivan in 5620, someone named Jehiel Fischel. Thanks to the blessed God, there are many yeshivot and chachamim in Babylonia who focus exclusively on Torah and divine service. This is especially marked at the yeshiva and midrash, which is named for the grandee Menashe, who supplies all of his wants and needs. Very interesting. This costs 50 coppers or more, and he pays it from a legacy trust in his father's will. So you can see the greatness of this family, what they devoted. In 1863, there were 30 Talmid Chachamim whose sole duty was to teach rabbinical students at the Torah Center. The greater Midrash was subdivided into many smaller yeshivot, one for each of the staff and instructors. And come what the year 1869, the number of yeshivot had been consolidated to 10 at that point in time. Now, at this stage in time, there'll be students even from Kurdistan coming, Persia once again, in India, and Central Asia will actually come now to Baghdad to learn at the Medrash Bet Zilka. Now, the Rosh Yeshiva was engaged, in answering various different halachic queries that were sent to him from abroad, many different shelot. Many of the questions dealt with, for example, marriages and divorce, education of the Persian rabbinate, for example. Many questions were written in Hebrew and Aramaic, as well as a few in Arabic, Persian and Turkish, which demanded substantial staff of scribes who were proficient in the various different Eastern languages, respectively, which is very interesting. Now, unfortunately, there was a burning of the Midrash in the year 1937. Let's just speak about this. I'm actually reading this from the Wikipedia. Excellent resources it's got here. So it says there, in 1937, after the departure of the famous Kabbalist Rabbi Yehuda Fataya from Baghdad and his immigration to Mandatory Palestine, there was a fierce controversy between the rabbinate and the community. At the height of the dispute, there were thugs on the side of the community, ignited, God forbid, terribly, the Midrash complex. A terrible act of arson. An entire Bet Midrash, including most of the Sifrei Torah and its extensive library, were burned at that point in time. A sole surviving Sefer Torah from the original Midrash, dating to the early 17th century, had been transported to the Be'er Hana synagogue in Netanya, over here. And so this is what's it's reported over after this actually occurred. The rabbinical staff taught in other synagogues during the 2 years of reconstruction of the Midrash, and the king himself assumed responsibility for the restoration effort, despite the fact that the arsonists were never imprisoned or caught. The library was re-established in a diminished form with donations, and so on and so forth. I would recommend everyone to learn more about this topic, because I'm just reading this not from the original source. It's quoted here on Wikipedia. So I'm just sending that now from the onset. Now, the Farhud, in June 1941, there was a bloody pogrom known as the Farhud, which struck the Jewish community of Baghdad, and the chief rabbi at the time, a famous Rabbi Yaakov Mutzafi, or Sisilula, over here this week it is, opened the gates of Medrash Bet Zilka to survivors of the atrocity who were evicted from their homes. He also arranged for their upkeep by donations from philanthropists in the community. Now let's explore some of the famous Talmidim of the yeshiva itself. There's famous pictures actually that if you actually go on currently on the Wikipedia website, where you can see Hacham Abdallah Sumech with Rabbi Yecheskel Moshe Levi, Rabbi Avram Hillel, Rabbi Yitzchak Michalad, Rabbi David Papo, Rabbi Sason Smucha, Rabbi Moshe Shamash, Rabbi Ezra Ades, and Rabbi Ezra Dango all together inside the picture. But let's explore some of the famous Talmudim there, because it's a really all-star lineup of great rabbis that learned there. also including Rabbi Abraham Hillel, who was a Chambashi and a head of a Jewish court, Rosh of Bet Din in Baghdad in his time, and of the community of Babel. We actually related over video. If I'm not mistaken, I think he's a great-grandfather of Hacham Rabbi Yaakov Hillel, who's a top leading rabbi in Israel. Rabbi Yitzchak Mejalad, another great rabbi we've spoken about on various occasions before. He was author of various different Torah works and the Chacham Bashi in Baghdad in his time. We spoke about him, was also a famous shochet over there. Rav Ezra Dangor, who would open up a publishing house in Baghdad and was also a Chacham Bashi. You can see the caliber of the students. I believe he was a Rosh of the Kehillah between the years 1923 to 1928. So I'd recommend everyone to look at him. Harav Shalom Dangor, another great rabbi. He would become a chief rabbi in a city of Suat in Egypt, respectively, and really help out with regards to Zionistic activities in Israel. Now, the famous Ben Ishai Chacham Yosef Chaim, who was author of various different great works and was leading, let's just say, rabbinical authority, outstanding one in Iraq, without doubt, in his day, and he was also head of the Jewish court, famous Kabbalist, and much more can be said with regards to him. Rabbi Yaakov Chaim Sofer, also popularly known for his book, the Kaf HaChaim. He was a great rabbi of his time and wrote various different Torah colossal works on halacha, respectively. He was also a famous Talmud over there. Now, Hacham Yecheskel Ezra Halevi, who was the author of Arugot HaBosem, a great Torah book. He was a posek, also once again a Kabbalist, a poet, a songwriter, a Jewish songwriter in himself. He would found various different yeshivot, I believe. He was also a part of the Talmidim over there. Rabbi Eliyahu Mani, another great rabbi, he would become the chief rabbi of Hebron, one of the four holy cities of Israel. Rabbi Shimon Agassi, the famous rabbi who we also spoke about before, he was a Rosh Yeshiva, a Kabbalist, a Darshan, a Payetan, one of the great rabbis of Baghdad in his time. Now, another rabbi we spoke about before, Hacham Yehuda Fataya, who was a great Mekubal, really chashuv, really important. Now, the great rabbi, Rabbi Yitzchak Kadori, arguably one of the most famous rabbis, definitely in the history of Israel. He was known as Zaken HaMekubalim. He passed away, I believe, quite more recently, within the last 20 years, I think in the year 2006. He was a Talmud. Rabbi Salmon Chugi Abudi, who was, let's say, chief rabbi in Baghdad, head of Jewish court in Jerusalem, he would go on to become, and he was part of the Chever, Ma'atzot Rabbanot Reshit, and Bet Din of the great rabbis in Israel. Rabbi Sasun Smucha, another great rabbi, he was a judge, Dayan, and the chief rabbi in Baghdad, and really head of Jewish court over there, respectively. Really great rabbi. Rabbi Elisha Dangor, now another great rabbi from the Dangor family. Once again, another Chacham Bashi, chief rabbi in Baghdad. Another great Talmud was Rabbi Nisim Halevi, who was an expert with regards to laws of Shechita. Rabbi Abdallah Somech, who was very close to, respectively. Rabbi Nisim Eini, who was another great rabbi of his time. We should really maybe speak. I don't know if we mentioned him on a separate video, but he was another great rabbi of his time. Rabbi Salmon Mutsafi, he happened to be, I believe, a famous Kabbalist. He was posek, a Rosh Yeshiva of Bnei Zion in Jerusalem. We covered a video on the great Chacham a couple of years ago. Rabbi Yecheskel Ezra Rachamim, he was a famous Mukubal in Baghdad, especially in the end of the time he was in Jerusalem. He was the author of the Torah colossal called Atzei Hayar, and various books on Chidushim on the Shas, respectively. Rabbi Moshe Chaim Shamash, he was, I believe, a Chacham Bashi in Baghdad between the years 1918 to 1923, and a head of Jewish court in Baghdad. Now, Rabbi Shlomo Tavlina, another great rabbi, Talmid Chacham, a sofer, a translator. He was working in press, I believe, and with the Magid Mesharim, for example, he was a Dayan. He was a great rabbi in his time, and I recommend everyone to learn more within regards to that. He was, I think, a prominent rabbi also in India, if I'm not mistaken. Another great rabbi, Rabbi Shlomo Bachor Chotzin, another rabbi we spoke about, Payetan, Posek, once again a writer in the newspapers, a translator, really working in printing, and part of the outstanding rabbis in Baghdad. Rabbi Abraham Sharabani, another great rabbi. He was once again a judge also in Israel. He was the rabbi of the Sephardi Kehillah in Rehovot. In Rabbi Georgi Yair, a famous Payetan, a Chazan, an educator in Israel. Rabbi Yechaskel Naji, I believe he was a judge one of the first judges, let's just say, Shofet Yudia Rishon Iraq, very, very great rabbanim. There were many great chazanim that would have also come out from the place. We mentioned some of the great rabbis, including Rabbi Tzadka Chodzin, who was I think the first chazan of the outstanding yeshiva in his time. Also Rabbi Sasson Dangor, another famous chazan, he was the second chazan there. Rabbi Yaakov Mutsafi would have the title as a third chazan. Rabbi Cheskel Ezra Abudi Atzlan. Now, the great rabbi, I believe we've mentioned him on this series before. He was also a prominent chazan there. Rabbi Yaakov Chai Yosef Nakash, also he would work as a chazan after Rabbi Cheskel Ezra Abudi Atzlan's position. And Rabbi Georgi Yair, who we just mentioned about before, he would work, I believe, for Shimesh Kechazan Beshnot 30 B'Yemei Chol. Very interesting. Rabbi Chacham Yitzchak Shmuel Shimesh, who was Chazan, also some Zemertov. Really interesting enough. So there's a lot of information related within regards to this famous yeshiva in Baghdad, the famous Medrash Bet Zilka. I recommend everyone to look more within regards to that. Some excellent notes using actually the Wikipedia article over here within regards to the famous article. There was a bastion of Torah learning in its day in Iraq of this magical era, let's just say itself. And many of the rabbis would go on also to become great rabbanim in Eretz Israel, in the Holy Land of Israel, at later stages of time. So I recommend everyone to look up information about that era itself, especially during the Farhud, maybe what happened with the arson attack, and the greatness of the great rabbanim and the philanthropists that are connected to the yeshiva. Now, friends, we're a community here. We're learning about the great rabbis of yesteryear, great Oriental rabbis. We are an online encyclopedia. We've covered more than 1,000 small biography videos of great chachamim of yesteryear. Please, everyone subscribe to the channel now. We're nearly on 7,000 subscribers, which is a phenomenal achievement. If anyone is interested in watching any of these videos, please share these videos to other people. And if you descend from any of these great chachamim we're speaking about, please send me a comment, an email, get in contact with me. I'd love to hear more from you guys. So wishing you all a fantastic day from the city of Bet Shemesh in Israel, and take care. And thank you everyone for watching.